Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we'll be talking about Valentine's Day and relationships. That's right, it's just around the corner, but you may be one of those who are out there wandering around single, alone, and wondering, how come those couples outside of yourself seem to be so happy? I mean, after all, you're the one who's been in relationships before, perhaps even several. Or maybe you might be that listener out there who was in a long-term relationship and you recently find yourself out there alone, dating quite a bit, but certainly not finding what you're looking for. The question is, are you still kissing frogs? Well, that is the title of the book we'll be talking about today, where our guest is known as a relationship whisperer who is also a former frog kisser. So apparently she'll be able to relate to you how you can get out of that rut of kissing frogs and seeing that prince that perhaps you're looking for. She is the 10th of 11 children. She's also a graduate of the 4-year Northwest School of the Healing Program. She's also a Reiki master and a certified clinical hypnotherapist. She's also pursued advanced studies with such luminaries as Shirley MacLaine, Barbara Brennan, and Margot Anand. She offers a variety of programs and classes to assist in relationship seekers. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our special guest, Jana Rosewood. Jana, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you, Daniel. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've had so much fun connecting with your program since Joy contacted me a couple of weeks ago. I listened to several recordings, and what I really love about it is that there's no commercials.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that too. We get to get right in the meat.
That is so great. I've been really enjoying it. So many good things have happened since you're contacting me.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Now, obviously you're not still kissing frogs, but I have to wonder, would that be the shade of lipstick that a frog would be wearing based on the picture on your book? A green frog, purple lipstick, really?
Would that be the shade of... Actually, he's been kissed.
Oh, I see. Oh, I get it.
He didn't turn into... It's called Disenchanted. It's by a wonderful artist in Minneapolis. JanieMork.com created that specifically for my book.
Uh-huh. Now, tell us, I mean, that's kind of a nice title because, you know, there isn't one of these, you know, ideas that we're, you know, out there trying to find the secrets to great relationships or how to do this or how to do that, but it's really quite a direct question, you know, are you still kissing frogs? How did you come up with that?
I was playing with a business coach, and originally this was not the book title, and it got to be a place where, are you still out there looking in the swamps for someone when actually, when you're looking for, there is no prince out there. It's an illusion. The prince or the princess or whatever you're seeking for is inside of you, and I know you know that because it comes right back down to that the love is inside of you.
Right. Now, it's funny because you say that you've kissed your share of frogs, in other words. How many of them do you think you've kissed so far in your lifetime?
Oh, good Lord. Let's go to past lives.
And do they taste like chicken?
Let's go to past lives where I had my mate chosen for me, and I think that's one of the reasons why I made a decision in this lifetime that I was going to just really attempt to start finding right relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And it just there were so many reasons why I wrote this book and why I feel so strongly about, you know, kissing the right person, being with the right person, because we do have a choice. And I didn't realize that I did. And you would think that most people, and I know most of your listeners are well informed, and this is nothing new, you know, become what you intend to attract. And
right.
All this, but there's so many deeper layers, you know, on the basic premise of what I'm talking about in my book and our stories about what we experienced. My husband writes 3 chapters in the book, too, and what we experienced in finding each other and finding right relationships.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's really interesting. I was just thinking about a girl that I knew years ago, and she had been married, and then I had run into her, and I said, so, how are you and your husband doing? And she says, oh, well, we're no longer married. And I said, well, you were only married a year, right? She says, yeah. And I said, well, what happened? She says, well, he just wasn't the same person that I married. And in knowing this girl, this is what came up in me. I'm like, that's the typical selfish you that I remember. The fact is, you didn't expect that somebody would change on you. What gives with that? For the better or for worse sort of a thing. But that's the thing is relationships they are. Would you say they're kind of a work in progress a lot of times?
Absolutely, and that's one of the points I make and I think that's a piece of why I'm writing this book and continuing to teach as a relationship whisperer is to stay on top of my own relationships. And in doing that, I'm also assisting others because I'm not separate from others. And in terms of this lady saying, well, that partner changed, actually she changed.
Right.
And what's really interesting is we're not ever really relating to ego and not the pure essence of the self connecting with that other soul. And so we're in love with a picture of what we think we're seeing, and then the picture starts to change, and we actually start hating the things we loved when we first were attracted to this person.
Uh-huh.
And we're not even aware that it's something that's inside of us that we're needing to work out.
Now, as a relationship whisperer, first of all, describe what that is exactly. I see this term of popping up in different, avenues. It started with a horse whisperer, then there's a dog whisperer, now we have relationship whisperer. What is that exactly? What defines what a relationship whisperer is?
I think, it's actually a term that it's out there. It's actually a marketing technique. I'll say that.
Okay.
And at the same time, I really believe it fits what I do, because one of the things that a relationship whisperer would be able to do is be able to read silent communication. When you watch someone, like for example in movies where they're training a horse, that whisperer or the dogs, the Caesar salon, who's witnessing the feeling and the sensation of what's going on and being intuitive. I think I developed that skill in being in a big family when I was younger, where I had to read the silent communication around me to stay safe. I was in an environment that was more of a conflict than it was of smooth sailing, and so I learned to read that silent communication and intuitively know what to do to stay safe. And I think that a relationship whisperer learns to read that silent communication, where the broken link in trust happens in a relationship, and to be able to help the person that I'm with to be able to handle their emotional body and get a handle on the emotional body such that they don't have to reject the emotional body but allow those feelings to come up and feel safe when those feelings come up, and be able to direct them and discriminate rather that I am not the emotional body. I am the light. I have a handle on this. I can handle this. And so I would say that would be what I interpret as a relationship whisperer.
Okay. Now, when people go into a relationship, it's pretty obvious for the most part, especially when we're young, that we tend to throw our best foot forward, our peacock feathers are there, but then the rest of the body isn't, so to speak. But over time, pretty soon, you get to really know who the person is. You hopefully are living with them and getting to see the real them. And that's when relationships get a little bit rocky, because they can't sort of maintain that facade. What do you suggest to people that they do? It seems to me that why don't you just come? I remember a comedian once said, that most people play hard to get. I play hard to want.
Most people play hard to get. And what was the last part?
And he says, I play hard to want.
I play hard to want. I have to take a second to wrap my mind around that. And what would I suggest to people who are in a relationship and they find this is not what I thought it was?
Right.
The only thing that I can suggest is that they start working with themselves, because if they're going to attempt to try to change their partner, it isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like, okay, that's cliche, but you really, all the things that I present in my book. There's nothing really new, let's face it. But we have to take those basics and go deeper with what works for us. I talk in the beginning about the book of going to be able to use the shopping cart method. You need to allow yourself to align with what works. And one of the things that I would say works really well is stop disapproving of your partner. I talk about that, and I believe I talk about that as well, and it works great. It's fabulous. It's amazing what happens when we let go of, and you used the word, I play hard to want. I play hard to want, and I play with that a lot because there's a different feeling in the body when we're wanting than when we're having. Mm-hmm. Those are two different states. Now, that sounds really basic, but it's really important because if we're looking for wanting to change our partner.
Mm-hmm. I think really what the comedian was meaning, though, is that, you know, I play hard to want. In other words, you got to be out of your mind if you want somebody like me because this is my stuff.
Okay, I got it.
I was surprised you didn't at first, but that's what made the joke to me when I first heard it so funny. Some people play hard to get, I play hard to want.
Okay, well, so my husband has this joke. He said, how do you get a girl from Wisconsin to laugh at a joke on Friday? He says, how do you get a girl from Wisconsin to laugh at a joke on Monday? You tell it to her on Friday. Here we are.
Okay, I gotcha. Well, the comedian was from Wisconsin, so.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
You don't know.
Now, you talk about a shopping cart. Now, this is, coming from a perspective that people are really out there, they may be out of relationships. They've been doing a lot of dating, perhaps even having a lot of sex because apparently we think, maybe women think that's what men want, which we do, but we also want more than that as well, and women want men. But there's a lot more to it once that's done. In fact, it was a funny shirt that I remember my brother had at one time that says, I think that we should have a lot more than just great sex in our relationship. And then the question was, do you drink?
Oh, my goodness.
But, you talk about the shopping cart or making that list. Now, talk about that, for instance, because a lot of times we tend to think of these things that at times may seem superficial about what we would like to have. It's not necessarily in a relationship. I think it starts from the outside, the way the person looks and all those outer qualities. But, again, you got the inner stuff that comes along with it. So talk about the importance of a list and how we approach that particular way of attracting a relationship.
Well, the importance of a list, it is so important, and it's so important that I ask that people keep their list once they get into a relationship because it's really fun. You can play some fun games with it. Mm-hmm. The importance of a list, I think we there's so many times, there's so many times that I think we make a list of something that we want and then we put it aside. We don't revisit it. We actually throw it aside, and when a potential relationship shows up and we say, okay, well, whatever, I'm just going to have sex with this person because we don't feel, possibly we might not feel like we will be wanted if we don't give something and we won't be liked. So there's a lot of places on this with this list where we can actually work with it. It's actually a living thing that we can actually use it for ourselves to really stay in line. When we write something down, it helps us keep our ego in check because our mind wants to run the show rather than our heart.
Fascinating stuff. I liked, when I was reading this, how you talk about affirmations. Jana, this is the first time that I have read about affirmations and the perspective that you put it in. Now, for the listeners out there, I've interviewed and talked with directly just about every top self-help person there is out there. Affirmations come up, and it's almost always the same thing. Put your affirmation down, act as if it's happening, say it over and over and over again, then you hear the argument, well, affirmations don't work. But I've never, ever, honestly, ever read what you've put in here in this book about affirmations. And I thought, what a profound tool. I would like for you to share with our listeners this. I know it seems to be jumping ahead, but I think this is so important in relation to what you have when it comes to making the list to attract an ideal mate. And I can see this permeating in all other areas of a person's life besides their relationships when it comes to manifesting and attracting what they want. Talk about your approach to affirmations.
My approach to affirmations is to actually one tool that people could use, the listeners, if they're wanting to use affirmations right now, is to actually stand and look at in your eyes in a mirror, and to state your statement. I now attract a loving companion, whatever your affirmation is, and you actually look at your soul, which is when you look at your eyes. And if you feel a resistance or a rejection, you allow yourself to feel those feelings. You say yes to those feelings so that they can come up and out. You actually imagine having a door on your physical form, on your body, and allowing those feelings to flow out so that you can ground back into a neutral space around that affirmation. Because when we go around bouncing around saying, I have my perfect partner now, you're just allowing that, it's in your head. And it's bouncing off of your energy field. And I like to say that I have this concept that we're one with everything. And when I say that, I mean, when I say it's bouncing off of your energy field, you are your energy field. You're not your body, and actually not your energy field. You are one with everything everywhere, so you're not allowing it to actually sink into everything. And then the other piece, that's just one exercise that listeners could use, is to actually stand in the mirror and allow yourself to feel the resistance. But if you feel a space of, yes, that's true, actually stay with it. Be with the feeling and watch your soul and feel the love that you are. That's not coming from your partner. That's coming from you. Mm-hmm. That's being created through you. Your partner is only a mirror reflecting back the love that you intend to attract. And so, to remind yourself constantly that it's not out there, it's in here. It's in here, and it's my choice to turn that on. The other piece is that I ask my clients to sit down every day, if they're really serious about this, and do it for 30 days, where they're meditatively writing the affirmation, and whatever thoughts come up, they write those thoughts down. And I tell you, sometimes when I'm writing affirmations, I sit and write several pages of content, what's in the subconscious mind, getting in the way. And then I work with the subconscious mind by being present with it. And again, I'm doing what's called the release technique, where I'm actually saying yes to those feelings. I'm not saying no, like, you can't do that. Let's be positive. I'm saying yes to those feelings so they can come up and out, be heard and loved out. And when I'm watching those feelings, I am no longer those feelings. I am the light that's watching those feelings, and they just simply dissipate out into the light. So what you're doing is actually journaling. And you're watching those words, and you're inside those words. It's a meditation.
Mm-hmm. See, just to give some clarity for our listeners out there, when you have affirmations about what it is that you're motivated by or what you want in your life, for instance, we'll just keep this one simple. I would like to be wealthy, or I am wealthy would be the affirmation. Well, immediately your subconscious mind jumps in with an argument because it looks to the outside and says, yeah, right. What you're suggesting to do is to take those things, that self-talk that comes up during the phrasing or the saying of this affirmation, and you write those down and you go into those feelings, because those are the true beliefs that are supporting the reality that you currently are creating. Is that true?
Yes, and I have to interject here. Since Joy contacted me, she told me about affirmations. Mm-hmm. And that's, is it Noah St. John?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, and his book, and I had downloaded it on Kindle, and I love it because it's true. When we work with the mind and we ask the mind a question, it will go after answers like a dog with a bone. Mm-hmm. And so I started, you say, I am wealthy. Rather than saying, I am wealthy, you say, why is it that I am so wealthy? Mm-hmm. And that is so cool, because the mind will come up with all kinds of...
That was a whole different subject for our audience that we haven't even approached yet, and here you're introduced.
I have to say, though, I mean, it's fabulous because my mind was coming up with all kinds of great answers. And I do say, though, too, I did feel some resistance sometimes and said it. So I would deal with the resistance by sinking into that feeling and really being with it and letting it go.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to bring up, your approach to affirmations, again, I think what you have in here is golden compared to anything that I've seen. And as I said, I've talked with these people. I've sat face-to-face with them. I've read their books, and we're talking a course of 20 years. Affirmations always come up. And then all of a sudden you're hearing, well, why don't they work? Well, we know why they don't work. It's because your beliefs, it counteract the reality of what you're trying to affirm, and it cancels it out. Anybody who's ever perhaps approached or read anything from New Thought, which spans back to the 1800s, says the same thing. You can affirm a thing, but if you come in and say it's opposite, you've now canceled that out. And they say, that's the thing to work on. So now back to relationships. Take a look at what you have as this list. I would like to have someone who is this. So I am with someone who is this. Click, then a thing from the subconscious mind pops up, and it counteracts that, so it just doesn't work. But now, in looking at this, working with, affirmations again in the way that you put it in your book, here's what I find interesting, that a lot of times this deep subconscious stuff that we have, that, goes hidden sometimes, maybe in some cases for years, tends to get triggered when outside of us we find someone that comes along, and this is just a guess, you can take this and run with it, that someone comes along, they trigger an active good feeling about maybe that thing that's inside of you you don't feel so good about, that part of you that stays hidden and buried and is afraid to be exposed. So all of a sudden, you're that light, you fulfill me, I want to be with you, until all of a sudden that relationship runs its course. That feeling is either fulfilled, maybe healed, or, just sort of gets complimented, and then all of a sudden, well, now you've got to deal with the rest of the person that you're with. You see kind of where I'm going with that? Does that make sense? Or am I telling a woman from Wisconsin a joke on Friday and she gets it on Monday? The idea is that you have this, let's say the skeleton's in the closet, okay? So someone comes along and they trigger that thing that may be inside of you. You go, wow, I feel pretty good. I feel positive about this, like I could bear this with this person, that one thing. But now there's these other things this person has too, and you go, wait a minute, I didn't want all that, and that as well, so to speak.
Yeah. Yes. Well, take it and run with it in terms of what I have to think about are the skeletons, my own skeletons of I talked about my leaving pattern, and it's amazing. My awareness about my leaving pattern of, whenever any kind of conflict in relationship occurred when I was younger, my mother would say, if you don't like it, I'll just leave, and I didn't know that was there. And actually in this relationship, it took me some time. That skeleton was there, and because we're in this relationship and we have a commitment to own our own stuff and to be in an equal relationship, you say, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? What I do with it and what I ask others to do with it is look inside yourself and work with those pieces until you can actually come up with the root cause what's really creating the skeleton, which the skeleton isn't really real anyway, and neither are our feelings. When I say our feelings, they feel real, yes, and they are real to the human self. I'll honor that. But if I asked you, Daniel, to mail your feelings, put them in a box, and mail them to me via snail mail, you couldn't do it. And so, we walk around treating these feelings or these events, these skeletons, like they're monsters that are going to run our life, and they aren't who we are. We have to be able to step back and allow ourselves to witness them. And I know, many people who meditate understand the idea of observing and witnessing and looking at our thoughts. That's not who I am. And I talked about when I got into all the programming I had getting into this marriage that I still hadn't worked out, I'm fortunately having a partner who was willing to just be with me in the place of, say, for instance, I thought that I had to, what is a wife? A wife is one who cleans house, she has babies, and she's available for sex. That's the programming I had as a good Catholic girl. And so I had to really work with that, that I was free to do anything I wanted in this relationship. It wasn't my stuff anymore. It showed up for this is the third marriage. It's about time I take a look at this is my stuff, not his.
I always find this topic so fascinating because there's just so much interpersonal growth that can be gleaned from this. And you think to yourself, how can you place all that on someone else to do for you, And it gets kind of crazy when you think about it that way.
When you think about what?
That, relationships bring up all this inner work, this inner stuff, and that we sometimes want to take that and place it on someone else as though it's their responsibility to take care of all this, and when they come up short, and you become disappointed, well, that just didn't work out anyway, and I'm going to go somewhere else kind of a thing.
Yes, and that's the place where I actually talk a lot, or think a lot about taking responsibility. Response-able. How am I able to respond to my own emotions and feelings? And, I can move on, but I'm going to, wherever I go, there I am. Yep, here we are again. Mm-hmm. And I can go around acting like a victim, or I can stand up and be victorious over my emotional body. Mm-hmm. Really not about the other person. It's about me.
Now, Jana, do you think when it comes to relationships and somebody has decided they have finally found what they feel they want or believe they want, you hear about compromise and communication. Let's talk about that and sometimes some of the myths that are out there about these two things, compromising and communication, and what the realities are when it comes to being in relationship.
Compromise and communication. Wow, it really takes a commitment to be present, and it's fascinating to me. Some days I'm communicating with my husband, and he's communicating with me, and we think we're on the same page, and we have no idea the other person is talking about the other thing. It's just amazing to me. And what is really cool is because we're patient enough to step back and be present with something's not right here. We're not communicating. We're not on the same page. And if we can really be present with that, then we can actually learn something about the other. What you said, communication, and what was the other?
Compromise.
Compromise. I think we have compromise. Am I really good at that? I think we are, and I think compromise is important. Well, do I have to compromise myself and my morals and values? No, I don't. Mm-hmm. And can I allow my partner to just be and do as he would choose to do? Yes, I can. Because is this unconditional love, or is this I will love you if you do as I say? That is not love.
Mm-hmm. I'm remembering a scene from the movie The Big Chill. And she's talking with her friend about how she's gotten to where she's been dating out there for the last 20 years or so, and she can tell within the first 30 seconds whether a guy stands a chance or not. Because she's saying after this long, either, the guy is somebody you want to be with, but they're married, or if they, aren't married, then there's someone, that isn't really ready to commit. And when they're ready to commit, you're ready to run, sort of a thing. Just breaking down all these realities about what it is to be out there dating, and she just says, I don't even know if I even want a man, but I do know that I want a child. But you talk about availability at some length, in the book about, are people as available as you think they are, even though they may be out there and being single, and that sort of feeling like, well, I'm going to just kind of hold back and just sort of play the field for a little bit. But, obviously if you start getting your list and you're going through it thoroughly, you're going to slowly reveal that person who's going to come along, and they're going to be probably just about as ready as you are. Does that usually work out that way?
Not always.
Not always, okay.
Yes, I I'd say it happened for me. I mean, it was amazing what happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it does happen for others that I've worked with. But not always. I mean, I think, there's some of us that think that there's a magic pill. And then there's some kind of, if they could just do this one trick or this one way of being in manifesting, then they can have what they want. It doesn't always work that way. I mean, we have to be real. We're human. We're here on the earth plane. And some of us say, okay, well, I've done my work. It should happen. But maybe we need to make a plan like, hey, how about we, now the dating services online are great. You have one on your radio program, spiritualsingles.com. Wonderful. I mean, I think, some of us, and I'm sure most of your listeners are intelligent enough to take a plan of action. But at the same time, I think that there's a misunderstanding of all this manifesting and you can do it. And I have done that. I've had magical things happen because I've had it in my subconscious and I really believed it. But at the same time, we still have to do some work, underlying work besides making your list, and sit down and really, really get clear on, because if you sit down with the goal of I attract my ideal partner now, but if you checked in with yourself, if you just said it when you were talking about this movie, this person had an attachment to having a relationship because she wanted a baby. And I've had a lot of clients who are having an attachment to having a relationship because they want someone to be their purse, their money.
Right.
And then they also have an aversion to it because they don't want to lose their independence. So they have this. They're living in a wall. I mean, you go to one wall and I'm attached, and you go to the other wall and it's like you're being squished. You can never really manifest what you intend to have because you're not 100% committed to that goal, and you're not clear of your attachments and you're not clear of your aversions. Now, does that mean you have to be completely clear? No, because we're already there. We're perfect as we are. But if we can clear enough of those hurdles to allow ourselves to get into the relationship we intend to have, then it's not the be-all and end-all. It's wonderful because I have many people, including myself, and I know you and Joy, have a partner where you can really sit down and have a conversation and connect at the heart and really be together and love together. Mm-hmm. But still, things are going to be there present to work with, and some of the attachments and aversions. I have to say, my husband has brought up for me my issues with my 5 brothers who would tease the heck out of me, and so then anytime my husband would do a little bit of teasing, then that old feeling of my brothers teasing me would come up, and then I would transpose those experiences onto my husband, and so I would be in transference. Mm-hmm. So we need to really take a look at some of these things that are underneath, but not let them run our life. I mean, sometimes we go too far with, well, if I can heal enough, then I'll be able to have something. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to step back sometimes and say, okay, I'm just not going to let this ego, this mind, these programs, whatever we've set into our subconscious mind run my life.
Now, how far should a person go? You talk about, for instance, how your husband likes to tease you from time to time, and how what comes up from you is your 5 brothers picking on you as you were growing up, and there's a point that, you just say, enough. Should you draw boundaries around those kinds of things, or is that something you should just kind of go as far as you can to where maybe, this really is okay. I kind of see the humor in this now, and it's really kind of funny.
Yeah, so, we're going on 19 years of marriage. And
so he's teased you quite a bit.
What'd you say?
I said he's teased you quite a bit then.
Well, actually, he doesn't very much anymore. This is the interesting thing. If it's an issue inside of us, it will come up stronger because we're resisting it. What we resist persists. We know that statement. Mm-hmm. And so as time went on, I would name the behavior to him. I would say, this is not okay with me right now. And as time went on, I became aware that he wasn't my brother's, and I healed those places with my brothers. And then he would start saying over a few-year period of time, well, it's interesting. You used to get upset with me when I teased you a little bit. It's really. And then the last couple of years, he rarely teases me because I don't have a resistance. It's not an issue anymore, and so it's not so much fun. I don't know. And so I think it changes. It changes when we change inside ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, that when you tend to see things differently, then they become different. And I've certainly, experienced that through the years with people that I've been in relationship with, whether they're friends or, girlfriends or family, whatever it is, that you start seeing things different because you make the shift. And not only are they different, but they actually become different around you. And it's pretty miraculous how, that's such an easy, thing to say, but when you actually do the work and you see, it almost seems like a miracle right in front of you.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm talking about when I talk about we're sending and receiving stations. And what's what I talk about with the disapproval. I saw it right. There's an example in the book with my husband, and he talks in this chapter where he had an issue with his boss, and his boss was in his face, and he stood there for a good 45 minutes to an hour, and it took him that long to shift to a loving space, but all of a sudden his boss was telling him how terrible he was and how many things he did wrong, and my husband was able to stay silent and listen, and finally, really with true love in his heart, send love to this boss, and the boss did a total turnaround. He turned around and started saying, well, on second thought, you did such a great job. I can't, lately the sales are up and whatever, and this has happened before I met him. And then when the boss left the office, the office mate said, what just happened? The boss was reading you a new one, and now all of a sudden he said you did a great job, and he walked out. Mm-hmm. He was just totally amazed, and then my husband explained, the power of the mind. The guy was kind of like, oh, well, okay, never mind. That he wasn't, really on the same page as my husband. But so we're practicing these things in our business every day, and it's a lot of fun to play with these things. The other thing that happened one day, my husband was on the phone, and he was starting to get upset with a bill collector, and I started reacting in my mind and sending disapproval. And then I realized I was doing that, and then I turned around and I let go and I went to neutral, and I just allowed him to do what he was doing, and he shifted on a dime. His emotions came down. So we're getting it all the time. I can be sending, if I think a thought about anyone, may say one of my many family members, they get it. And I'm going about my day and I'm thinking, oh, why did my husband put this spoon in this drawer? He gets that intention, that zing. And so then if I can turn it around and send approval as much as possible, meaning just send love and appreciation, focus on the appreciation, they get it, and it shifts things miraculously. Mm-hmm.
It makes things kind of exciting, especially as you may be out there dating or, perhaps you're beginning a relationship, that a lot of times we tend to want to come from a place of reaction. And I like what you're saying, that what you're suggesting is that when you feel that reaction, and you literally feel this, and so that's where I believe, or where I think that our feelings are real, because you feel this thing coming up, it becomes real. But as you feel this, what you're suggesting, Jana, is that we just simply sit in that moment and feel it. You don't have to spout out, hey, how dare you call me that, or what's the idea of making fun of my shoes, for instance. But you sit with that, you feel the feeling, you kind of let it settle, and then you say, thank you, and that whole thing sort of shifts. Is that kind of what you're suggesting there?
Absolutely. Okay. And what else happens is, this is my analogy, we can be with our nose up against up against the wall, and all we see is that interaction. But when we let it go, all kinds of other information comes in, and it's amazing what other perceptions come in. One day I was with, I told my sister-in-law that I wasn't going to come to dinner because I had something else going on, and I could feel how she was so disappointed. And then I started releasing what I call feeling the feeling of her disappointment. And instead of focusing on her disappointment and disapproving of her and disapproving of myself, I felt those feelings, I let them go, and what happened is I came to understand that she wasn't upset with me, she was upset because she wanted to spend time with me. She needed more information, she needed And so I got more information. When I do this, I get more back.
That's amazing.
And my analogy is this: is I'm standing in the Grand Canyon, this beautiful landscape, and my nose is up against the wall on a cliff, and I'm hanging for life on a cliff with my nose up against the wall, and all I could see is this one trauma or this one interaction. But if I slowly shifted, I could see that there's so many views in this Grand Canyon, so much beauty, so many opportunities, so much to see, but my nose is up against the wall. All I can see is that one interaction, but when I allow that interaction to float through, almost like someone who's practicing martial arts, they don't go into resistance. They take it and they let it flow by their body, and then they are able to see and become the champion of their life. They're connecting with their beingness that has all the answers, the light that they are.
Fascinating stuff. Now, do you facilitate group workshops?
I do.
Okay. And do you do those with both men and women together?
I have.
Okay. I wanted to bring that up, Jana, because I think that's always such an interesting experience, having participated in group facilitations like what you're talking about. Not maybe necessarily in relationships, but, in other things. But what's fascinating in a group setting is you could feel the energy of vulnerability in a group.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And I think this is what makes it exciting, because really that's the point that you're trying to work with the most, is that, yes, you are vulnerable, but you are not, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't know, maybe it'll come to me on Monday. But, but the idea that that's okay is to feel that come out, because that's where the courage comes in, that you rode that wave and you're ready for the next level. And that's what you've been talking about here. And that's the beauty about relationships. For instance, we always hear, well, in a new relationship, or as we begin a new relationship, we bring our baggage. There it is. And, well, we're not really willing to open up that suitcase and show people what's inside that bag, when in truth is, hey, that's okay, here's what's in my bag, maybe we can get rid of some of this stuff and, put some new stuff in there, kind of a thing. Talk to us about what that experience is like when you work in groups, in the essence of the vulnerability, and then you see sort of the warrior, that courage come out in a person to say, I step into light. I step into life, and I accept, and I want, and, I crave the new experiences that I used to resist.
It's just, there's so much, it's like we resist these feelings because we think they're going to kill us, bottom line. And there's so much joy, and the tears are tears of joy, tears of appreciation, and becoming closer. It's like, as we release this baggage, we're lighter, we're closer, we trust more, we allow ourselves to be more vulnerable because we do trust. We see that it is not that scary to allow ourselves to open the bag, if you will, or and then put new things in, which is like, oh my gosh, I am loved. There's so much love here. I had no idea. And again, it doesn't come from the other person. The other person is mirroring that which we have inside of us already. I already said that, but I can't say it enough. Because it's my current practice it's dangerous to think that I'm getting something from out there, because I'm forgetting who I am. It's here inside of me.
Mm-hmm. The sad story you talk about in the book, what exactly is that?
What is that? What?
The sad story. You talk about our sad story. Because that's something that I've noticed over the years, and you hear this, and it's pretty much common with a lot of people over the years. When you go, let's say, on a first date or a second date, you're talking about the past relationship, and it's either what they did or what they didn't do, and you're like, okay, enough of this. Let's talk about something else, but it's that sad story about why you're single, I guess.
Yeah, the sad story. It's, it's like if I continue with my sad story, I act like someone did it to me. And when I start talking about what someone did to me, it's no longer them doing it to me. I'm doing it to myself because now I'm owning it as mine. It's like, I'm wearing these clothes. How about I just wear a different suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's time to let go of the sad story. And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the pieces that I mentioned. I do go into detail on the list of so many things to think about on your list. Is one of the things is the person that you're with, that you're dating, do they question? Do they tell these sad stories like they're the victim? Then I would beware,
mm-hmm.
because they haven't stepped up to their own personal growth.
Ah.
There is a place of talking about what happened, and there's a different energy behind it if they're talking about it from neutrality and taking responsibility. I created that,
mm-hmm.
And so that is one of the pieces that's really important to look at. How does this person that you're with, that you're experiencing, how do they respond to life? Are they taking responsibility, or is it that everyone's doing it to them?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important piece to look at.
Because the next thing you know, you're going to be on that list.
Pardon me?
I said the next thing you'll know, you'll be on their list. You're that person that did this to me also, so there you go. You're part of their top 10.
Exactly.
That's funny. Now, you also talk, and you were just briefly touching on that forgiveness and why that's also important, especially when it comes to those things that come up within you. And just sort of kind of forgive and release and let go. Talk about why that is such an important element, especially when it comes to that part where you're doing this work. You know, you're building this list. You do the affirmations that you talk about in your work, and then you go deeper than the affirmations to find the feelings that these affirmations really bring up. And then you kind of forgive, release, and let go, why that's really important, because to me it seems then whatever you put on your list becomes real, like, wow, I can't believe that actually really happened. But you really become an attraction magnet almost, don't you?
Yes. And if you're carrying that place of all that garbage from the past, that's your old story. That's the story. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to move into that new phase of your life if you haven't done some work with, okay, I can let this go. I like the what I put in there is Fred Luskin, who wrote Forgive for Good. And forgiveness is about taking back your power. It's not about, he says, it's not about, forgetting that something painful happened. And we have this illusion about what, I searched for years about how can I really forgive, but forgiveness is really actually coming back to that basic thing that I've been talking about all through this conversation, is to actually feel the pain and the sadness. Mm-hmm. Open the doors on your body and see it, let it go, see it going. You might have to do it a dozen times, but it does become more neutralized as you watch it, because when you watch it, you are no longer that experience. You are no longer that picture that you're holding in your head. And you can let go of that picture and let it, as you allow yourself to feel the pain. And, years ago I had started working with forgiving, and I was in this marriage, and I had called my ex-husband in my second marriage, and I said, I really apologize, because I see now that you really did love me, but I couldn't let it in. Mm-hmm. And, of course, he was quite upset with me, but we won't go there. But I was just being vulnerable and honest, and so anyway, as we forgive, we can lighten our load. We become physically and more healthy. It's just, we have this vision of if we forgive, then that makes them right. So if we can step back from right or wrong, good or bad, it's about us. It's about taking back our power. It's about cutting off the baggage and stepping forward with a new story, a new perception of how life is with us. That's our old view. It's just a view. We don't have to attend that movie anymore. There's new movies to attend, and they're just grand.
And most importantly, as you said, make the commitment to step into this as well. I mean, it's easy. You hear a lot of people sometimes, they say, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try this. but I'm going to make sure that I have this to fall back on. And you're just making things harder for yourself as you talk about, that when you make that commitment, it actually gets easier. It may seem hard in the beginning because you've actually put yourself all in, but at least there's no turning back.
Yes, and my husband talks about in the book about his aha. He was reading his book Heart Over Heels by Bob Mandel, and this aha was like, oh my gosh, commitment. It's so freeing. You're not on the fence anymore. Should I jump this way or should I jump that way? It's like you're all in, and you feel vulnerable, and you're stepping into the unknown. But it's a leap of faith where you're actually just stepping in and saying, "I trust. I know. I'm moving forward." And yes, the commitment is freeing. It helps us to focus because there's no longer an option here or option there. We're focused on one direction.
Mm-hmm. I thought about that, and it reminded me of a little movie years ago starring Demi Moore and Rob Lowe. And they came together, and they were enjoying each other, and then finally he just wasn't so sure anymore. And she says something that to me it stuck with me from this movie, and that is she, was breaking down emotionally, realizing that he just didn't seem to really want to make that commitment to stay with her, and that is she was saying, you're afraid that you're going to actually find somebody that you believe is going to be better, and then you're going to realize that you're stuck with me. And how often we actually probably feel that way sometimes, that we think there's always going to be something better, so why make the commitment in the first place? Where do you think that really comes from?
Oh, it's just, where does that come from?
Yeah.
It's an ego space. I mean, I couldn't relate to that in terms of the relationships so much as I would have to say my work, and there's something better would come along. I guess I'm kind of removed from that now because I'm so into this relationship. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest about that. And where does that? So the question is, where does it come from? There's always the grass is greener on the other side. The ego is always going to do that to us. It's always going to say, no, don't go there, and there's something more. And it's never enough, right? I mean, we get our toys, and we get this, and we get that, but there's something more. It's actually the emotion of lust. There's never enough. Mm-hmm. And it's a lower form. Lust is, there's on a scale of emotions from apathy all the way up to pride. It's a higher emotion, so it keeps us, a little bit happy and a little bit in there in terms of excitement, because lust is excitement, but there's always a fall down after that excitement. It goes right down to apathy, which is the lowest emotion on the scale. If we can get ourselves above and beyond that lust and beyond pride, I'm better than you or you're better than me, we can get into that courageousness where we can take risks, we can step forward, or we can get into acceptance and peace, and that's the place that we want to gauge our moving forward into, is just playing in that emotion of courageousness, acceptance, and peace.
I know for me, just to kind of maybe bear my particular vulnerability, if you will, when I was building my little list years ago, for me, one of the relationships I always got a kick out of, if you're going to relate them, to movies or TV, was that of Luke and Laura on General Hospital.
Okay.
Okay. And what I got a kick out of that relationship, not just because they seemed committed and in love, but they were always going off and getting in little adventures together and being able to trust each other that they could somehow get through it together. And I thought, that's cool. If nothing else, I want a partner that you could just kind of go out no matter where you're at in the world and get in these crazy little adventures together and trust that you can actually count on each other to get through these things. And, if beauty comes along with that, fantastic. Everything else would be kind of a bonus.
Wow.
And sure enough, it's kind of it's played out that way.
That is wonderful.
So, it's funny because you hear so much, this day and age, especially in the media, about trophy wives or, the sugar daddy, this and that. And I think, that's so superficial. You can get that at any time, anywhere. You don't even have to be in a relationship for those kinds of things. But something like what I'm talking about, you really got to be all in. You've got to have a commitment to go and do so if that's what you want. So
to be with someone that's the complete package, and I got your back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important. You know, I got your back. We can go anywhere with anyone. We can just go anywhere, and I got your back, and we're going to have an adventure together. We can do it together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So what is it like as people approach, Are You Still Kissing Frogs is the name of the book for you people who are just tuning in. And when people actually break through those realizations of what they say they at first thought they wanted, and then they start doing this deeper work that you talk about doing, these archaeological digs, and then they kind of realize, as you said, you build that list and then you hold on to it. Does the list actually seemingly change a lot of times for people?
It can, and I think it's important that as we encounter, if we're really with the process, if we're encountering things that aren't working as we go about our going out there and our search, our shopping list is really, it's a love list. If we, instead of, if something happens that it's like, okay, that's a jerk or whatever, instead of calling this situation a negative situation, I'm just going to put my head under the covers, I'm not going to put myself out there, take the list back, check it out, see if you actually flip the experience around so that you can perceive what you intend to have, because and I know you notice, most of us focus on what we don't have and what went wrong. So can we say, okay, this is a learning process, and can we keep that list and work with it and make sure that it's there, so that we're naming what we intend to have. Mm-hmm. And the other part is does it change? The question says, you said, does it change? Well, okay, does it change? Okay, I put on my list, I wanted to attract someone who would stand up to me, because I was with men who wouldn't stand up to me. They would be like milk toast, and they'd wilt down, and they would, whatever you say, dear. Okay, I want someone who I can really go to toe with and have a conversation, be in relationship with. And as soon as I was in this relationship, my husband stood up to me because I had it on my list. But see, okay, so there's the place where you can talk about, well, did that person change did Ken change when we got married? No, he didn't change. I asked for this, and here he is with me. And I had to go back to my list and say, oh my gosh, I asked for this. And plus, it's like we have this list, and we can get into relationship, and my husband and I play this appreciation game with the list where we look at it and we say, oh, look, you have this quality, and I didn't even think to ask for it. Wow, it's a good thing that it's this or something better now manifests itself for me, because I can't possibly with my mind perceive the highest and best. And so we say we got it better than we thought we asked for, than we even asked for.
Right. Fascinating. Now, Gianna, if you could, for our listeners out there, do you have a website people can find out more about this?
One of the things that my website's currently being remade, as Joy and you are doing the same thing. My current website is rosewoodwisdom.com, but it is an older website. So, and then if they want to access my free gift, which is rosewoodwisdom.com/gifts, and then they can get more information about the list, because I give a free report, six individual reports on the gift, the list, the love list.
Very good. The book is Are You Still Kissing Frogs? Our guest today is Gianna Rosewood. Gianna, what a pleasure to have you on the program today. Always fun, and now I learned the value of waiting to get the joke on Monday.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure.
Thank you again. We want to also thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in and your comments that you were able to give to me. Also type in to beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We'll have a live link for you there for Are You Still Kissing Frogs, so you can find out more about that as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.